My friend, have you heard of the blasphemous blade?
Of course I have.
What?
It is like the most popular weapon in Elden Ring.
What? No, it's just a boss weapon. They're all popular.
Oh yeah? Well, have you ever seen this animation before?
What the hell is that? Ladies, gentlemen, and tarnished of all ages,
Too many people are using similar weapons in this game, and while I understand why, especially in a game like Elden Ring that focuses so hard on the challenge that the game poses, sometimes finding the optimal weapon can be an easy solution, but it is not the only solution, and sometimes the weapon that's just slightly off of optimal is way better than you might expect, and quite fun. Today specifically we are going to be talking about Remembrance weapons that you can trade for in the round table after killing a significant boss. There are 17 of these in the game, but I would argue only a handful of them are properly, frequently used by the player base at large. Some of them have taken a bit more of a niche hold, and others have just been completely abandoned, which is a little bit odd because in theory, every one of these should be good, right? It's a boss remembrance weapon. It holds a very significant place in the game and requires you to do a task that the game is labeled as important. And the reality is, of course, that every one of these weapons is at least good. We already know the ones like Blasphemous Blade that are insane, but what about the others? In my humble opinion, while only a couple of them are broken levels of good, there are many more that are both extremely fun and still incredibly good that I just never see anyone wielding in the game. And so today I present to you 5 underrated remembrance weapons in Elden Ring, with the intention that maybe, just maybe, I can convince a few of you to try them out and actually build around them, seeing the fun that they have to offer. Without further ado then, first up, let's talk about the Sacred Relic Sword, the remembrance weapon from the final boss of the game. And wait, before you say it, yes, I know, almost everyone out there probably has this thing in their inventory and has probably used it before, but the main reason that most people pick it up is to farm runes. It is head and shoulders above the rest of the easiest ways to farm runes in the entire game, but I think because of how public it has been for this specific purpose, it has become completely ignored for the rest of what it does, completely left by the wayside as, well, an actual weapon for genuine combat, not just one specific pack of enemies over and over, but every enemy, bosses, the entire game. This weapon is genuinely good, releasing a wave of holy energy forwards extremely far in a very wide cone, and not only will AI simply just not dodge it at all, but it is actually quite hard for human players to dodge it if you play in the right places too. And then all it takes is one mistake to get absolutely blown up by it. This weapon does incredible damage when you build towards it, and it is simply one of the least skill required ways to deal thousands of damage in a button press, especially considering the ridiculous radius of the animation itself. In the recent patch 1.04, the devs actually lowered the FP cost of this attack, making you much more capable of spamming it back to back as a proper weapon, as well as both increasing the cast speed and decreasing the recovery time, which just makes a skill that is stupidly damaging and easy also safer to use on repeat. If you want to use this thing yourself, you need to have 14 strength, 24 dexterity, and 22 faith, and the skill on the weapon best scales with faith itself. Second up today, we've got the Winged Greathorn Great Axe. This one comes from the remembrance of the Regal Ancestor Spirit boss in Nokron, the Eternal City. And this one, I think, is the rarest remembrance weapon in the entire game, as far as people actually holding it in their hands goes. Every other remembrance weapon I have encountered someone holding somewhere, seen images or video of someone using it in some way, but this one I have just never heard anyone talk about at all. And there is a real genuine reason that we probably should, which is its weapon skill. This weapon's skill lowers your opponent's defense by a fair bit for a short duration after walking near the cast radius, even after you've casted it. The exact number is hard to get into as you can't really test it by hitting enemies in the game, because every enemy has different damage negation ratings, and so the amount that this skill will increase your damage directly depends on that. An enemy with super high damage resistance, like the Frozen Dragon, for example, gives us a personal damage increase of around 13%. Yes, there are many other ways in this game of increasing your damage by the same amount as 13%, but this is one that applies a debuff on your enemy rather than a buff to yourself, which means that immediately after you cast it, you can swap to another weapon. You can completely remove it from your inventory if you really want to, or my personal most enjoyed playstyle with this weapon, which is power stancing 2 great axes, one being the Winged Greathorn with the defense debuff, the other just having a generally high hitting damage weapon skill on it, and bam, it creates quite some fun. In PvP PvP, this is actually just sort of funny, mostly because, as I said, nobody uses it, and the direct result of that is that nobody knows what is happening when you press the button, and a million balls of spectral energy just start floating into the sky. This guy thinks the apocalypse is raining down upon him, but it's just a debuff that's already been applied. I love it. To use this weapon yourself, you'll need to have 30 strength and 20 dexterity, and it scales pretty much equally well with strength and dexterity, making it ideal for a quality style build. Thirdly, we have the Dragon King's Cragblade. Out of the ones that I've mentioned today, this is the one that I do actually see on rare occasion, but this is a discussion about underrated, which means even if it is something that people think is good, oh man, are they missing out if they don't realize it is fucking incredible. And that is absolutely the case with this one. Don't get me wrong, the Sacred Relic Sword is good. When I was testing it and messing around with it, it felt powerful, but nothing that I have messed with for this video today felt like this weapon does, and that is ridiculous to me considering how unused it goes. The weapon skill turns you into a dragon lightning cloud, flinging forward, dealing lightning damage, and then a big pop at the end for a noticeably very high chunk of damage. If you charge this attack up, it goes super far and does a bit more damage, but you can also just tap it to turn into a cloud and do a short range quick stab, which still notably does a ton of damage itself. Unfortunately, while this skill can be charged, it doesn't count as a charged skill as far as the Godfrey icon talisman for some reason, but honestly, if it did, it would be busted, because as it stands, this thing is an absolute wrecking ball of a skill already. In PvE, it just does a ton of damage, and on top of this, there's a fun little bonus for this weapon itself that it does straight up bonus damage to dragons, specifically being 30% more damage to standard dragons and only 15% bonus damage to ancient dragons. In PvP, I love this thing. Genuinely, I don't know if I've ever had as much instant, simple success in duels as when I went into it with this weapon with a simple, singular mindset. Stay as close as possible to your opponent, wait for them to start attacking you, then just hit Dragon Cloud form. See, Dragon Cloud form has a ridiculous amount of poise, able to even withstand something like a downward slam from a putrid avatar. Yeah, that's a really big freaking hit right there that you can just power through. And so in PvP, the best way to use this as a really deadly weapon is to simply wait for your opponent to start the swing, bait them into it however you must, and then hit the Ash of War button, tank the one hit that they do, and one-shot them. The damage is right at the threshold where you can one-shot a lot of people but won't quite one-shot others. It depends entirely on their armor more than anything else, but considering the simplicity of that tactic, that is an absolutely gross damage number, in my opinion. And I do mean that in the best of ways, of course. Gross, the good way. To use this thing on your own, you need to have 18 strength and 37 dexterity, with dexterity clearly being the main stat that you care about when using the weapon yourself. Fourth up, let's talk about a whip, the Giant's Red Braid from the Fire Giant Remembrance. This weapon is really cool. I love the concept, a lock of hair of a fire giant retaining some of its magical power. I mean, imagine getting beat up by someone and then realizing afterwards that the weapon that they used was literally just hair that they slapped you with. I mean, come on. This thing generally has all of the same strengths and weaknesses of other whips in the game, meaning high range and decent damage but very low stagger damage, and no poise while using. This whip specifically, though, also does fire damage, which is a good damage type, and the weapon skill on it, Flame Dance, is both fun and great when used correctly, which is even easier to do now. In patch 1.04, they actually added a couple of roll windows to this skill, meaning if you start it up at a dangerous moment, you can just roll right out of it to dodge the incoming damage instead. This one isn't the highest damaging weapon in the game at all, but it is definitely a very good weapon. It is an extremely fun weapon, and with the changes in the patch, it is way more usable in general combat without getting yourself punched in the face. So while this weapon may have been accurately rated before the patch, I think this change is enough that people should really check this thing out again properly. I especially like the concept of power stancing two of them together, as you have been seeing in this footage. In PvP, this thing essentially just functions like any whip, but with a decent AoE weapon skill around you when you need it. Whips aren't known for doing the most damage in player combat, but what you have more of than just about anyone else is range. So you can use that range to bully people into doing things like that. So, you know, that's pretty sweet. If you want to use this one yourself, you need 18 strength, 12 dexterity, and 21 faith. This one scales quite evenly with both strength and faith if you intend to completely build around it. Fifth and finally then today is one I absolutely love, the Bastard Stars Flail from the Remembrance for Astel, found in the Ranni questline. This weapon is good, the skill is great, but the main reason that no one touches it is because Wing of Astel also exists. Its weapon skill is the same concept, but focused more frontally instead of a circle around you, making it easier to aim. And that's a bit of a shame, because on a deep, personal level, I really love flails. Aesthetically, they are my favorite kind of weaponry, so of course, I wanted Bastard Stars to be superior to Wing of Astel. And while I'm not here to make the claim that Bastard Stars is better than Wing of Astel, I will absolutely happily say that it is better in very certain situations when used right, as a big enemy can trigger a load of explosions from one cast. But not only that, but the way that you are allowed to think about the skill is actually totally different. Wing of Astel just places these little exploding things in front of you. Bastard Stars is a circle with a forward leaping component, and the thing that I really don't see people ever take advantage of with this is the ability to just make enemies chase you. In PvE, more often than not, your opponent will be sprinting at you, trying to stab at you. So if you can use your weapon skill to leap away and leave a trail of delayed explosions behind you, why wouldn't you? You could just kite things around from relative safety in a way that Wing of Astel simply can't. Yes, the damage is lower unless your target is big enough and mobile enough to take multiple ticks of the damage, but the playstyle difference and swapping of tactics makes this weapon totally worth existing and using even in the same game as Wing of Astel. It is a very similar skill with a very different sort of function, and like many on this list, I simply never see this weapon, and that's a shame. I mean, it's literally a flail composed of a bunch of tiny little planets attached like a solarium that someone accidentally threw in a box of glue. I don't know why you would have a box of glue, but I just don't care. I love this weapon. In PvP, it is also reasonably good. Of course, the windup is reasonably long, so it can be hard to get it off, but if you do use this weapon against someone who is really aggressive, they will just die. Someone needs to know how to play against this to survive. If you make the Bastard Stars player come towards you, then you basically win. If you run towards Bastard Stars, you're dead. And just in general, I think this weapon is just pretty good. It's not ridiculous, but it's good. And I accept completely that me calling it underrated is at least partially because I have a severe soft spot for flails, and especially a flail made of a fucking solar system. But it's still worth using because of the entire difference of playstyle. To use this one yourself, you need 8 strength, 22 dexterity, and 22 intelligence. It scales best with intelligence by a country mile, so you probably want to use this as a simple supplementary tool in your sorcery build. And that just about covers it. I've been Dinosaur from RageGamingVideos, and this has been 5 underrated Remembrance weapons in Elden Ring, and why I think that everyone should be using these more. As time goes on, I'm seeing more and more people gravitate towards fun things, and less just towards some sort of meta, and I hope with this change of mindset, some of the really good but obscure weapons like these ones will come out more into the fold. Like if you like the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.